A lot of people wanted this guy dead.
Yeah.
And a lot of those people happen to be in our government. And there were a lot of reasons for it. Like if you talk to any of the Cuban-related guys who were within our government and services from the time today who are still alive, they will tell you straight up, oh, he was a traitor. Like they will use language like this, no questions asked. If you want to play the game too, though, with the what they can prove is consensual is not, though, it gets dangerous because you can start to say the same things about Weinstein, right? Because hypothetically, obviously I think it's very clear what the guy did, but he could say they came over to his hotel room and he just insinuated like, hey, I have the power to put you in this movie. And they consensually said, well, let me put you over the top, which is not how I believe it went down. But you see what I mean?
So the counter argument to that is, yeah, I 100% agree. There could be, I think from you speak to every 5-10 people on the street, they would say, yeah, they knew what they were doing. But our understanding of sexual assault and misconduct has changed dramatically. There are people who are sexually assaulted and they stay in touch with the people who abuse them. They might say they love them. There are a lot of complicated psychological and emotional factors that go into this, and it doesn't mean that they're not credible. It may complicate the story, but it's understandable. There's a lot that goes into this, and there might be people who feel it looked like everything was consensual. There are people who rape their girlfriends. There are people, it happens. And you said it before, like one thing can be true, another one could be true at the same time. It's going to be very fact specific, but I would say one of the reasons that I think Weinstein was convicted is because if that case happened 20 years before, where someone's like, they knew what was going on, but our whole understanding of it, and particularly from the Me Too movement and hearing the testimony, by the way, it's different from me explaining versus actually hearing the testimony from people. Yes, they're cross-examined. Oh, yeah. They're cross-examined. They should be, but it's different, and it'll be up to that jury. Trying to find a jury, though, it'll be tough. I think, because this case is like...
It's going to be a shit show.
Everybody knows about this case.
Oh, yeah.
But do they know the specifics of it? Do they know exactly what the charges are? We'll see.
We will. Now, you've also been looking at this JFK stuff?
Yeah.
You were telling me before?
Yeah.
This is a throwback, but it's so much fun. I've done great podcasts in the past with guys who just know all about this, so... Our mutual friend, by the way, put this together, Joseph Scott Morgan.
Love him.
Came in here.
Love him.
I had done 146 with him, but then he came in for 170 and 171, and we did
Which one's this one?
This is going to be 290 something.
Okay.
But, we did like the whole JFK case from like the how the evidence was taken from the beginning to the end. It was really incredible stuff. But like, now these files come out, and it still feels like there's a lot we don't know.
Yeah. Look, you have to think about it like this. I didn't know too much about JFK before, and I've spoken to experts about it. Where does it come from? It comes from like the Warren Commission. First of all, it's so not organized, right? It's so not organized. There was no like analog. There was no like index. It was all over the place trying to understand. What I think the conclusion is from the people I've spoken to is Oswald was the shooter, but it seems to me that the CIA, at the very least, failed to do what they needed to do to watch him and to properly. And it does become a question about why that happened. They were tracking him. They knew his movements, but I can't say from the documents that have been released and analyzed and from the people I've spoken to that say that the CIA was, a part of the assassination or they were complicit in it. But there was a failure. And what I do think is interesting as well is there are nuggets in there like, the George Underhill one, right? The guy that said the CIA was behind it and then he dies 6 months later.
There's a lot of people like that.
And it's only going to amplify the conversation. I know that there were people who testified on Capitol Hill recently who say they want a further investigation into it. There's the truth. It's going to take years to properly understand everything. Because, by the way, it's not like we haven't seen these documents. The big thing is there was a lot of documents that are now unredacted that were previously released. So I think it's going to take years for people to understand and put into context a lot of what was released. And I'm not sure if anything else is going to be released in addition to that. But I got to give it to the Trump administration for doing this and for releasing it and providing a point of transparency. The conversation will continue. And like we said before, it doesn't matter what was released. People will still have their opinions one way or another. It doesn't matter what the verdict is. People will still have their opinions.
Well, we've got, when you look at the ballistics and everything, one thing that's always been clear is that if Oswald was a shooter, and I actually think he probably did fire shots, He wasn't the only one. And we've now had congressmen and women come out and like say they've been told that as well. So there's at least something there. But, you know, if you go through some of the guys who really had dug into this case in the past and did it from just a hard evidence perspective, like to me, one of the guys that puts together this whole picture the best was the dude, David Talbot. He wrote a book called Devil's Chessboard. You ever read that?
No, but I've heard of him. Yeah.
Oh my God, man. It's insane because, you know, a lot of people wanted this guy dead.
Yeah.
And a lot of those people happen to be in our government. And there were a lot of reasons for it. Like if you talk to any of the Cuban related guys who were within our government and services from the time today who are still alive, they will tell you straight up, oh, he was a traitor. Like they will use language like this, no questions asked. Not just, and it's not just because of like what they feel like the Bay of Pigs was and all that and him pulling back, which I think there's a lot more of that story, just my opinion. But, you know, it's also because allegedly he was talking with Khrushchev about denuclearizing. And the two of them were having an open conversation about it. And that was the bridge too far. That's where intelligence said, fuck that. We're not taking away any of our nukes or anything like that. We reserve the right to have to bomb the Soviets. Because at the time, like this is just, and you wonder how much of this still exists mentality-wise within the government. But this is a time where people within the government openly thought of things in the following way. Like they looked at it like, well, if the Soviets nuked us, we would lose 60 million, but when we nuke them back, they would lose 240. So we win by 180.
Yeah.
Instead of the world lost 300 and we
Yeah.
lost 60.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Which then you think about it and you're like, the people that think like that, it's then far-fetched to say they would have taken out a president. Of course it's not.
And I think there was evidence in there that, you know, there was a conflict between JFK. There's some tension between JFK and the CIA. I thought it was interesting, Fidel Castro was quite concerned after the death of JFK, right? He was like, now we're dealing with Johnson, and I don't know what this is about. And there was an unpredictable nature about it because there was always, you know, was he some sort of was part of it as well? I thought the most interesting thing was the CIA operations, right? Just understanding these efforts to poison the sugar supply, right? You know, I think it was of Cuba, or no, maybe it was the Dominican Republic. Now I don't remember, but it was like these ideas, these covert actions in different countries, and just I thought that commentary and those memos were the most fascinating part of it because you wonder, wow, this is what they were up to, but what are they up to now? It didn't stop. It didn't stop. It didn't stop in the 60s, in my opinion. So I don't have proof of that, but that was my interpretation of it.
Yeah, I think about this a lot. That's why I like to put these guys on camera. Just get the testimony, everyone out there can hear it, and you wonder what they hold back. But I was telling you before, I had a guy, Matt Hedger, sitting there recently for a couple different podcasts, and you know, he was a knock, and he's very forthcoming about what that entailed and what that was and what he thinks was good about that. But it's a moral quandary. Because a week after I had him sitting there the second time, I had Ed Calderon sitting in that chair who's, you know, been battling the cartels for decades. And Ed Calderon brings up, or we can talk about the CIA fucking flipping major banks to get them to fund the cartels. And I'm like, just had the guy sitting there who told a story about how he did that.
Yeah.
And it's like, all right, what's the bigger national security implication that makes you do that? It better be good.
Yeah.
You know, but who are you to decide that in a way? Like you're talking about organizations that murder people like crazy and infect our streets with drugs in this case. And when you look at some of the examples you're given, it's like, all right, the CIA wants to overturn this government. How many people are they going to kill to do that?
Don't you remember what President Trump said? I think it was in his first term. It was like talking about like, maybe it was about Russia. And he was like, you know, like, oh, he's a killer. He goes, we got killers here. Or like, we've killed people. You know, remember that?
We got killers too.
Yeah. It was, but no, it's the truth. And I again, I don't think it was every administration that would release this information in this way. And yes, it was a haphazard release. There was things that were released quite quickly. And by the way, there's more Epstein files, I think, that they have to release as well.
They didn't to your point, they didn't release anything the first time around. Those binders, that was a photo op.
And the idea that the FBI withheld it from Pam Bondi, like
not that guy's call. That guy got fired. It's not his call.
I don't know if he stepped down because out of principle. I don't remember.
He was told.
But I think he also had like another beef with the administration as well.
Yeah, he was told to resign, I believe.
Yeah, so it's like, you know, I give it credit, but it doesn't solve a lot of people's questions that they have about it. But it's fascinating. It's fascinating. I mean, it's one of those things that so we did a sidebar episode on JFK. It was my idea. I was like, we don't usually do this. Let's do it. Maybe there's interest. Made like 2 million views in the first 24 hours.
Yeah.
Like people were just eating it up. They still have, it's one of those cases. It's one of those situations. People still want to know what's going on.
He was a sitting U.S. president.
Yeah.
He had his head blown off in public.
So what happened with the Trump assassination?
Great question.
We don't talk about that anymore.
Talk about that at
we
all.
don't talk about the attempted assassination. I mean, where's the document release on that? I mean, isn't it amazing, this news cycle? I mean, first it was, by the way, it's funny. The drones in New Jersey, was they here?
Yeah.
Well, you saw them?
Yeah, I saw a few.
Yeah, okay. Where's that story?
Gone.
Gone. Yeah, don't worry about it. What'd they say?
I know why that one's gone.
Well, you're not going to say? Okay. All right. Well, it was funny. The Trump administration basically was like, it was, I forgot what they say was it weather related? I don't remember. But anyway.
Yeah, it's some bullshit excuse.
Yeah.
Thank you guys for checking out this clip. If you haven't already subscribed, please subscribe and hit the like button on this video. It is a huge, huge help. And if you'd like to check out this clip's full podcast episode, that link is in the description below or right here. And finally, you can follow me on Instagram and X by using the links in my description below.